Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited to be sharing two tags that I created using this very cute and adorable Be of Good Cheer die set by Tim Holtz, which is an exclusive for the Simon Says Scam DieCember. This mini die set features a little snowman and a Santa. Well, you get this die set free with $25 purchase of any Tim Holtz products while supplies last. And no code needed for that. It'll be automatically added to your cart. Let's take a closer look at the Be of Good Cheer die set. Now, this little mini die set has 17 pieces to create those beautiful Santa and snowman focal point, along with three tiny little stars or sprinkles or sparkles, which you could add to embellish your card fronts. Well, in this case, I will be creating tags. Now, here's a look at all those little tiny pieces of dies which could be used to create these beautiful little images. Now, you could definitely use it as focal points on your cards, or like I'm doing here, create a tag. Off camera, I went ahead and die cut all these pieces using my scrap pieces of cardstocks. Now, for my snowman, I die cut a little piece from the black cardstock, which would be the background, so that we could use it as the eyes and the mouth. Thereby, we don't have to do any inlay. Now for that glitter cardstock, that is the green glitter cardstock by Your Paper Insider, and I love that pretty little pink blush on his cheeks. Now this snowman also comes with a tiny little hat, a very delicate hat. You could either use it or skip it altogether. Well, initially I thought that I would use both of these die cut images to create a beautiful focal point on a card front and create a Christmas card. But I wanted to do something different here and create a tag. Here I'm using the deco tags by Hampton Arts. Now these are pre-cut and pre-punched tags and they come in a pack of 20 along with some twine which you could use on these tags. I will be using these tags on some of the gift baskets where you could also use these tags as a whole to create a focal point on your Christmas or holiday themed card projects. Well, since this is a holiday theme card, I wanted to add some beautiful splatters on this. Initially, I thought I would go with gold, but well, let's do some snow splatters. And for that, I'm using my Altenio ink sprays and splattering it all over these tags. Now, I'm not very particular on how these splatters fall because I wanted to keep it more realistic and have a snow flurry kind of a look. Once the paint on both these tags dried, it's now time to adhere both of these die cut pieces. Now, since these were the center focal point of our tags, I decided to pop it up with a lot of foam tape. Yes, I do a lot of foam tape on my cards, on my focal points and die cut pieces and even sentiment strips. I placed both of these focal points a little towards the top of the tag because I wanted to add this happy holiday sentiment on the bottom of my tag. Now this is from the Peaceful Trees stamp set and I stamped it using VersaFine Onyx black ink and cut them using coordinating die set. Just like I did with my die cut pieces, I popped up the sentiments also using some thin strips of foam tape. Now I'm using some red and pink and gold twine to add on my tag and I will cut off any of those excess pieces. Well, here's a look at those finished tags. Now I must say this was a very beautiful and easy piece to assemble and I absolutely love how those tiny little pieces created such a beautiful image. All you have to do is puzzle piece all those tiny pieces together to get a beautiful focal point. All the supplies that I used in today's video will be found linked in the description box below. All of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of these links, I will get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be showcasing a card that I created using contents of the Simon Says Stamp August 2024 card kit called Graceful Flowers. Well, here I am beginning a new series where, and a playlist where I will have cards that I create using the contents of the Simon System card kit. Uh, for our card today, I will be using or mainly focusing on the embossing folder that is provided in the card kit. It's a beautiful 3D embossing folder, and I had so much fun using this. Well, this project it can be very easily mass produced in a variety of different colors, and you have some beautiful sentiments on the stamp set. Well, here's the Blossom Swag 3D embossing folder with a beautiful textured look that I will be showing you later in the video. Also, I'm using the Graceful Flowers stamp set, but from this stamp, I'll be using only the sentiments and not any of those floral images. I went ahead and used this embossing folder on a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch and A2 size card panel and just take a look at that detailed 3D embossed floral image. Well, the camera doesn't capture it so well, but in real life, it's absolutely stunning. Now, for the color choices, I decided that I will go with the Botanical Blooms paper pad that was provided in the kit. I wanted to select or get be inspired by some of these beautiful, gorgeous floral colors on these paper pads. Initially, I thought I would go with blues and greens or maybe even pinks and yellows. But it was not until I saw this big flower on this pattern paper I decided I should go with pinks and purples. I wanted a seamless transition between both these colors. So I used my go-to colors here for ink blending, which are the Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated inks. For my pinks, I have peonies and carnation, and I used amethyst and orchid for my purples. These inks they blend so beautifully. Well, it was at this point that I decided that I wanted a slight border all across my front panel. So I went ahead and cut this panel to 4 by 5 1/4, which is slightly smaller than an A2 size panel. I then ink blended purple on the bottom of this panel and pink on top. Initially, I thought I would keep it a little on the lighter tones, but then as I was coloring and this 3D embossed image was picking up the color, I decided I might as well go a little darker and heavy handed with my coloring. So here I am with this beautiful panel, and I colored just around the edges and left the center white. That is where we will stamp our sentiment. I placed my panel on the stamping tool. Usually I would just use my magnets, but since this was already colored and all it needed was a stamped sentiment, I decided I didn't want to take any chance. So here I am applying some adhesive on the back of the panel, which will hold the panel in one place just in case I decide to stamp the sentiment twice. Now, if you don't have a temporary adhesive, you can use any normal double-sided tape too. All you need to do is run some anti-static powder tool over it, and that will remove some of the stickiness and your panel won't stick to the stamping tool. So here the tape on the back of the panel is just enough to hold the panel in place and it won't tear it when I try to remove it out of the stamping tool. I stamped the sentiment which says wishing you the best twice using Versafine Onyx Black ink. I love this ink and I love how that white center is perfect for your stamped sentiment. Here's a look at the finished panel. Well, since we used the Versafine Onyx Black ink, you could also use some embossing powder over it if you like some shine on your card. And here's a look at that white border, which is absolutely beautiful on our card front. Now, since this 3D embossing folder gives a lot of texture and dimension to our card, I decided not to pop it up even more. So here I am using a double-sided tape to adhere my card front on the card base. I made sure there's a lot of adhesive because of the texture on this, and all we need to do is stick this onto the card base. Cutting the panel to 4 by 5 1/4 was definitely a good idea. I love the white border. Well, now let's add some shine and sparkle to our card. I am using the prism sequence from This Calls for Confetti. Now, whenever I'm adding any kind of sequin mix on my card front, I like to keep them in odd numbers. So here I have three on the top and two at the bottom. Here's a look at the finished card. I love how this turned out, and well, it was so easy to create. All you had to do is emboss a white panel and add some beautiful color to this textured background. Well, this is a card that can be easily mass produced, and you could add any sentiment of your choice. Here's another project that I created very similar to this one but with different colors. Here I have yellows and oranges. And here instead I changed the orientation of the card and added a new sentiment which says here's to a new chapter. And I have some gold holographic sequin mix again by This Calls for Confetti. I had so much fun creating this card. I am in love with this 3D embossing folder and plan on creating more such projects, changing the sentiments, adding more sparkle and shine, and even trying the blackout method, which is a recent rage in the card making world. Thank you for being here with me today. I will be back with more fun and colorful card projects for you guys. Until next time, stay safe. Hello, crafty friends, and welcome to my channel. I am so glad you're here. Today, we will be creating a very clean and simple card project with a die cut focal point. We also have a very neat sentiment, which we will be pairing up with a small sub sentiment, essentially doing some masking on a totally different stamp set. Clean and simple, but we have lots of shine and sparkle and some colorful splatters. Well, before we take a look at the card, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and make sure to hit the bell icon so that you don't miss the next time I post. Let us first take a look at the die set that I will be using to create the focal point of our card today. This is the Exotic Blooms die set, which is a beautiful floral die set that comes in a set of two. We have one which creates the leaves while the other that creates the flower. Each of the flower has two layers of petals along with some detailed stamens to create a striking detail. These would be perfect to create beautiful botanical elements on your projects, be it on cards, scrapbook pages, or mixed media designs. You could cut out these using white cardstock and add some vibrant colors, or use some leftover scrap pieces of cardstock to create a beautiful floral arrangement for your projects. I cut my leaves using some scrap pieces of green cardstock, while for the flowers and the stamens, I decided to cut them using white cardstock, and I will be using some beautiful yellows and pinks for my flower and a vibrant orange for the stamens. I'll be using the Simon Says Positively Saturated inks in the shade Peony and Citrine for the flowers and Pucker for the stamen. Well, these are very tiny little pieces, and I wanted to make sure that my blending process was a lot more easier. So I like to use my Simon Says Positively Perfect Craft Tacky Mat. This double-sided tacky surface helps to hold all of these tiny little pieces in place. It also has grid lines and markings if you prefer ink blending on an A2 size or A7 size card panel. To add some shading on my leaves, I used pine, which is a beautiful dark shade of green in the positively saturated ink line, just to add some details to the edges of the leaves. Now, once I'm done ink blending, I removed all of these tiny little die cut pieces from the craft tacky mat. To clean the mat, I like to spray with some water and wipe the surface using the Simon Says Stamp microfiber cloth. Well, if you feel if there's a lot of ink or any kind of lint on your mat, you could wash it under some warm soapy water. And don't forget to place the acetate on the front and back when not in use. This will preserve the tacky surface. Well, next, all we have to do is assemble the floral arrangement using some Barely Art liquid glue. Next, we will work on our background panel. I have a white cardstock which measures 4 by 5 1/4, which is slightly smaller than a standard A2 size card base. Now, before I add all of those beautiful splatters on my background, I wanted to make sure that I have the orientation of the card front finalized by making sure that my die cut focal point and the die cut sentiment have enough space and are not crammed into the card front. Initially, I wanted to create a landscape card, maybe a top folding card, but keeping in mind the spacing between the adore sentiment and the floral arrangement, I decided to go with the portrait orientation. I die cut the word adore using some black cardstock. Now, if you remember, I did mention that we will be using some stamp masking to create a small little sub sentiment. Well, instead of masking, if you prefer stamp surgery, that is cutting out part of the stamps, you could also do that. I will be stamping the word you from the circle sentiment stamp set. Now, the stamp has beautiful sentiments in an absolutely gorgeous font. I will be using the sentiment which says, and adore you. Well, you could use any sentiment which ends with the word you, and all I did was mask the word and adore and stamp just the word you using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I made sure that I positioned this word right below where I planned on adhering the adore die cut sentiment. To mask my sentiment, I used a small post it note, and right before stamping, I removed the sticky note and stamped the word you on the card front. I like to use my Simon System grid transparency sheet to make sure that my sentiments are perfectly aligned. Well, now it's time for some sparkle. I will bring out my splatter box while you will see that this box is very much loved and has been used for almost all of my card projects. Now I wanted to add some pink splatters on this card panel that would match the pink on my flowers. Before I added the splatters, I did go ahead and cover the word you with some scrap piece of paper. I also added a little bit hint of black on the card front that will complement the black on the die cut sentiment. Next, I also added some sparkle on my focal point and also the adore sentiment using the shimmer mist. I love the shine and sparkle that this mist gives to my focal point. This is also another product that I would highly recommend if you are someone who loves shine and sparkle on your card fronts. While all that watercolor splatters and the shimmer mist dries, we will work on our sentiment. Off camera, I did go ahead and cut the word adore twice using the same black cardstock. We will stack these die cut pieces over one another to give a more dimensional look. I like to use my liquid glue over all of these delicate die cut pieces. You could also use some spray adhesives or those adhesive sticky sheets, which essentially turn your die cut pieces into stickers. Well, I prefer using liquid glue because that gives some wiggle room to adjust these tiny little pieces before we can finally stick them down together permanently, making sure that they are perfectly aligned over one another. I did adhere the third adore layer, which is the one with the sparkle, and we have our die cut sentiment ready to go onto the card front. Now all we have to do is assemble all of these little pieces onto our card front. I like to use my Simon's stamped T-square ruler to align the die cut sentiment right above the stamped U. Next, with some back and forth, I adhered the floral focal point onto the left-hand side of the sentiment. Well, there are so many ways you could place these flowers. Either place them just like I did here over one another, or you could just add one of these floral arrangements or maybe create a bouquet of flowers. There's so much you can do with this beautiful exotic blooms die set. I love having such versatile die sets in my collection. Now, these would be perfect to create focal points or even backgrounds, basically for any occasion cards. I used the adore sentiment here, but you could also create a birthday card, a thank you card, or add some beautiful sentiment strips. These arrangements would basically complement any sentiment that you use on your card front. Using some foam tape, I adhered this panel onto an A2 size top folding note card. And with that, our card is ready. Well, yes, I did say clean and simple, but why not add some more bling to this card project? I used the pastel tones Positively Dazzling Gems. These have some beautiful pastel shades of gemstone, and I decided to use the light pink gems. I added them on either side of my sentiment. Well, now that's the finished card. I love how beautiful this card turned out with all those intricate and detailed die cuts. Well, for both my sentiment and the focal point. The splatter on my background and the shine and sparkle is absolutely stunning. I'm sure I'll be using the exotic blooms die set for many more projects in the future. All the supplies that I used in today's video will be linked down in the description box below. All of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. I hope you enjoyed watching today's video as much as I did creating this card project. If you have any ideas or suggestions for a future video or how I could use this die set differently, please leave a comment down below in the comment section just below the description box. Thank you again for joining me today. I hope you have a fantastic new year. See you again with something fun and colorful in 2025. Until next time, stay safe. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. First of all, I would like to thank you all for being here with me today. Today, we will be creating a very clean and simple card project, which is very quick and can be easily mass produced. Now, well, these cards are perfect for your holiday theme projects, your winter cards, and there are so many fun ways you could use the stamp set that I'll be using today. Now here I'm using the Warmest Wishes, CZ Designs Warmest Wishes stamp set by Simon Says Stamp. This is part of the December 2024 card kit. Well, yes, it's December card kit and I can't believe it. We are already at the end of 2024. Now, just like any other card kit by Simon Says Stamp, the Warmest Wishes December 2024 card kit is also jam-packed with some fun surprises and amazing products. Let's take a look at the beautiful stamp set that I'll be using to create our cards today. This is the Warmest Wishes stamp by CZ Designs and it features some beautiful, very cozy winter themed stamps. We have a 4 card sweater, knit hat, mittens, ice skates, leafy borders, leaves and berries and branches and lots more. Now, these would be perfect for your winter themed cards and projects. Now, this stamp is a layering set, and you will see that there are alphabets and numbers that are in order so that all of these stamps they coordinate together in order to create a beautiful image. Like you see here, you have 1A, 2A, wherein we have the branch and the leaves and the berries, the coordinating berries. Just like that, we have sets for those skates. We have 1C, 2C, 3C, and all of the other little tiny images that go along with the skate to create a beautiful stamped image. Along with that, we also have some cozy sentiments to complete the set. We have a warm hello, warm wishes, skating by to say hi, stay cozy friend. Well, there is absolutely beautiful sentiments, and also the font on the sentiments are, I feel, something that can be used throughout the year. I could swap the word warm wishes and make it as birthday wishes, or say bundle up, or sending hugs, or instead of sending cozy hugs, I could just do some stamp surgery and make it sending hugs. That way, we could use the stamp set throughout the year with those beautiful fonts and sentiments. Now, I have a panel. This is an A2 size panel, and I decided to stamp that leafy arch-like border on one end of this panel. Now, the stamp set also has coordinating dies that can be bought separately. Well, when you subscribe for this card kit, you could also add some other products that you need. Well, the coordinating die set would be perfect here, and that would be shipped along with the kit. Now I'm using my Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated inks here for all of the stamping. I love these inks and these are perfect for stamping, ink blending. I absolutely love them and have used them for almost 2 years now. Now here I have Fields, which is a beautiful green, and this is what I have used to stamp the foliage. I stamped it twice. Now, along with this foliage comes with the second part of that layering stencil, which is this beautiful berries. Now, for this card particularly, I wanted to have some gaps, so I am placing the berries a little lower than intended. That is because the focal point images are much smaller and won't cover a whole lot of this card front. Now to ink up these berries, I am using these mini ink cubes. These are again the Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated inks. These are the mini ink cubes and absolutely amazing. When it comes to stamping these small images, I used paprika, which I thought went absolutely perfect with those berries. Now, this paprika ink was from one of the new sets of ink cubes by Simon. It is the Red Earth 6-pack variety. We This was released during Stamtember, and we have six shades of allspice, Cabernet, nutmeg, paprika, punch, and sangria. Now, once I was done stamping my florals and the leaf arrangement, it was time to add my focal point, which is again the stamped image. I decided to go with the mittens here. You could use a single color to color your mittens, but here I decided to have two colors, blue and brown. Now I had to do some masking here, so here I took a sticky note, sheet of sticky note, and adhered it onto the stamp and where the lines meet. And it's difficult to see here on camera, but once I get stamping, you'll know what I meant. Now, whenever you're masking, just make sure that before stamping the image onto your card panel, don't forget to remove the mask or the sticky note or whatever you're using to mask off the rest of your stamp. Well, you'll see later in the video that I barely get it there. Now, initially I thought I would use a lighter brown latte color, but I decided to go with nutmeg, which is a darker shade of brown, and I thought perfectly matched with these holiday themed colors. I stamped each of the layers twice, and here you'll see me stamping the nutmeg twice. And initially, you feel it's a lot darker, but as this ink dries and gets absorbed in the paper, I feel it lightens up a bit, it softens up a bit. Now, once I was done with my browns, I decided to use iris on the mittens. I thought this was a beautiful blue purple tone for my mittens and matched absolutely perfectly with those holiday colors. Again, I stamped it twice. Now, here is where, well, I did add color to the mittens, but I almost forgot to remove the masking paper and had almost stamped it. Well, if I did, it would actually ruin my focal point. But I'm glad I remembered at the very last minute and I removed the masking paper. Now, once all of those beautiful, colorful images were stamped, it was time to stamp my sentiment. I am using the Sending Cozy Hugs and will stamp it using my Versafine Onyx Black ink, which I feel is an absolutely beautiful black, crisp black ink. Again, since these stamps are new, I decided to stamp it twice. Usually, my Versamark Onyx Black ink, if I'm using that ink, I would stamp the sentiment just once. Now here, this is absolutely beautiful. I know my image is a little off-centered, but don't worry, we will be cutting down this panel and making it smaller than a standard A2 size card. I used one of the smaller rectangles from my Spellbinders A2 nesting dies to cut out this panel. Now, once this panel was ready, I thought it was really simple and needed a bit of shine since this was more of a winter cozy theme project. And well, shine and sparkle in my cards are an absolute must. So I matted this onto a sparkly gold cardstock to create a beautiful gold border. You could also add some gold embossing on the borders here to create that gold effect. I stuck my panel onto this gold panel using liquid glue and then adhered this entire assembly onto a red side folding card base using some foam tape for added dimension. Now, since this was a really simple card, I wanted to keep the bling to the minimum. So here I have the Simon System Positively Dazzling Gems in the metallic tones. I like to use this tray by Cat Scrappiness. This holds all of these gems in place and it has a little gap through which I can put all of these gems back into those little tiny containers. Now these gems come in three different sizes. So here I used the medium and the smallest size gems and scattered it around my image and the sentiment and adhered them using my Barely Arts glue. Now, this is where I thought my card was done, but I was really not happy with that red and I thought it didn't match with any of the colors on this card front. Well, at this point, all I had to do is change out my card base. So what I did is I cut out this panel and I very carefully, using a pair of scissors, I cut around that base of the panel so that it wouldn't show out when I stick it on a white color A2 size side folding card base. Well, let me know in the comments down below if this happens to you where you have created your card and At the end of it, you're not satisfied. And also let me know, what do you end up doing? Do you discard your card or do you repurpose it in some other way? Now here again, I just added some liquid glue on that red, and nobody will know that we had some kind of mistake or some disagreement with the choice of colors that we used. And since it was already popped up on that red panel, I did not need to use any more of foam tape, and all I needed was liquid glue to adhere this panel onto a side folding A2 size card base. And here's a look at the finished card. I really like the white on white, and the gold really pops up that panel well. Now, like I said, this was a very simple and easy design and very quickly can be mass produced also. Now, off camera, I went ahead and created a different card wherein instead of the mittens, I switched to the sweater. I absolutely love how this turned out. Now, here, the difference between this card, both these cards, is the color of green that I used here. Here I have sage, and those berries are more snug into that floral or leafy arrangement. Also here, I have used the warm tones, positively dazzling gems on my sweater to add some shine and bling to our card front. You will also see I swapped up the sentiment and added sending warm hello. So this is perfect where you want to create a bunch of cards or set of cards as a holiday gift for your loved ones. Now, I created some simple single dimensional cards. Well, if you preferred to have some pop on your card, you could definitely either fussy cut out these images or use the coordinating dies to pop up these images onto your card front to create an extra dimension. Well, I hope you had fun watching the video as much as I did creating these beautiful cards. All the supplies that I used in today's video will be linked down in the description box below. Note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that whenever you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Also, don't forget to check out the Warmest Wishes December 2024 card kit by Simon Stamp, which is loaded with so many fun products. I would love for you to become a subscriber to my channel, and if you do subscribe or are already a subscriber, please make sure to hit the bell icon so that you don't miss the next time I post. Hit the like button and let me know in the comments down below if you have any ideas or suggestions. Also, if you'd like to share your creations, please tag me on my Instagram. There's a link to that in the description box below. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a very fun and colorful card for you guys using embossing folders. Now embossing folders are my absolute favorite. I have created so many cards using them. But this technique here is something new to me. Well, it's an absolute rage right now in the card making world where I see a lot of crafters using this technique to create beautiful card fronts. Here I have a card where I have used the embossing folder, the deboss side of the embossing folder, used a lot of color and there is a lot of texture and sparkle, and this is a technique that you could easily use to mass produce your cards. Let us take a look at the products that we will need for this technique. Well, I have an embossing folder here. This is the Blossom Swag embossing folder. It's a 3D embossing folder which was part of the Simon Says Stamp August 2024 card kit. Now, I have noticed that 3D embossing folders work best for this technique as it gives a lot of lift and texture to our paper. Now for the blackout technique, we will be using the deboss side of the embossing folder, that is the dented side. Usually for most of my card videos, I have used the embossed side or the side which is raised and has texture on it. But for this one, we are using the deboss side and coloring in all of those indented patterns that is formed on the paper. Here I am using some white cardstock and I like to spray some water on it just to prevent the paper from cracking. Now here's a closer look at the cardstock. This is the embossed side, the raised portion, and this is the debossed side. This is where we will be using all of our coloring and ink blending. To color these beautiful floral arrangement, I'm using my Spectrum Noir Tri-Blend markers, and I will be using these to color all of the flowers and the leaves and little berries on this floral arrangement. Just make sure that you have color on all of these nooks and crannies, and you need not be perfect here. It's okay if your color seems to be out of line and out of that debossed image. We will be covering it up with our ink pad. For all of my flowers here, I have used shades of pinks and reds and maroons. And for the leaves and all the branches, I have two different shades of greens. You will also notice that I left some of the flowers white with just some yellow center over it. That will give a beautiful texture and added interest to this card. Here's a look at the panel. Now this doesn't look as perfect as it should be, but the ink pad that we are going to use here will cover all of those imperfections. I'm using the violet shade from the Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated Ink Collection. All you need to do is swipe the pad onto the panel. The ink will be picked up by the raised portion of the paper, and all of the debossed image and the colored image will not catch this ink. You could also use a brayer tool to add proper layer of color, but I like some of these imperfections that I'm getting here. Don't worry about that big blob of ink that is on the center of this card panel. The beauty about Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated inks are that once it dries, the color kind of settles down and it's not as dark as it seems. I went ahead and swiped this ink pad a couple of times until I got the desired result. If you want a more smoother finish, I would suggest using a brayer tool. Now, after I was done swiping the ink pad, I noticed there were still some white areas on my leaves and flowers. So I went ahead and used my tri-blend markers and covered all of those white areas. I also wanted a little more added texture here, so I went a shade lighter and used Iris, which is a darker shade of this purple, and added just a few highlights here and there just to add some texture to my card. Now, one tip here which I thought was very useful is using contrasting colors. Now for this panel, I wouldn't suggest using an ink pad which was either green or in the pink and red tones. Blue, purples, they give a contrast to this floral arrangement that we have created here. You could also go darker shades or even use black ink pads for this technique. There was definitely a lot of ink from the alcohol markers which bled through the paper, but that will not harm our card base. You could just add some adhesive and stick it onto your card base. Now next I went ahead and added some splatter on this card front. Now if you know me, I like a lot of shine and sparkle on my card. So here I have some gold metallic watercolor which I like to splatter generously on the card front. Now once the splatter was dried, I adhered the panel using some foam tape. Now whenever I'm using embossing folder, since there is a lot of texture on the paper, I like to add foam tape which I feel secures the panel as compared to using a liquid adhesive or any kind of double-sided tape. Now, along with the gold metallic splatter, I thought it would be perfect to add some sequin mix. So here I have the gold hologram sequin mix by This Calls for Confetti, and I like to arrange them in odd numbers using my Barely Art glue. Now, here's a look at the finished card. I love how this turned out. There's another card I created using the exact same technique, but instead of coloring using my alcohol markers, I just ink blended using mini ink blending tools. And this turned out absolute perfection. I also used my shimmer pen on all of the leaves and berries for some shine and sparkle, and I changed the sentiment here and the orientation of the card. Like I mentioned before, this is a very fun technique. There's a lot of color, and this is something that you could use to mass produce cards. You could use so many different varieties of color combinations, different embossing folders, and create beautiful card fronts. I hope you had fun watching the video as much as I did creating these cards. Thank you for joining me today. I hope to see you again in my next video. Until next time, stay safe. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I have not one but two cards for you guys. Now this is a 2 for 1 technique where you use a large stamped image, be it any floral image or any other border image. You could use that and create two cards using just one single image. Now, if you're someone like me who loves creating A2 size cards and your images are larger than your A2 size panel, this would be a perfect technique where you could create two cards using just one single image. Now, for my focal point, I'm using this large, beautiful floral image from the Graceful Flowers stamp set, which was part of the Simon Says Stamp August 2024 card kit. Now, this is a perfect floral theme stamp set. We have this beautiful big floral arrangement and a little flowers on the bottom where you could use that as your focal point. Also, there are some beautiful sentiments and beautiful font on these sentiments, which would be absolutely perfect for your card front. So I plan on watercoloring my image today. For that, I used the watercolor paper that was provided in the kit. I cut this to be 5.5 by 4 1/4 inches, which if folded would be a standard A2 size card base. I placed this paper onto my stamping tool and aligned the floral stamp. And well, I will be stamping this using the Simon Says Stamp clear embossing ink. Now I want to emboss this entire image using some gold embossing powder, which I thought would add a lot of shine to our watercolored image. Now here I am using the anti-static powder tool, which here is important because, well, first of all, it's very difficult to see this stamped image onto the watercolor paper. So you need to make sure that you get proper lines, and also since this paper has a lot of texture, I stamped it twice. Now even though I had used a lot of that anti-static powder tool, a lot of powder got around the area where the image was not stamped. So I cleaned that with my brush, paint brush. You could use any thin or flat headed paint brush for that. Now I'm using my heat tool to heat set this beautiful gold embossing powder. Now I stamped this image on one corner of this watercolor paper because I knew that I needed some space to stamp my sentiments on both the panels. Now to color these floral images, I have the watercolor brush markers by Altenew. This is the Spring Garden set, which has some really beautiful and vibrant colors. Now these are dye-based watercolor inks. They are water reactive and you can move and revive the ink when it dries up. Well, I started with this bright pink color and I wanted to do a little bit of shading here. So I added some extra saturated ink onto each of the corners of this flower, and then all I need to do is put in some water and just pull out the saturated ink towards the other corner of the floral image. Now the bristles on these brush tip markers, they are flexible, they form both broad and fine strokes. Now you could apply colors straight from the marker, or if you want a more diluted and muted look, you could dilute it with water for more softer look. Now this is a non-drip valve which gives a consistent ink release and there is no color contamination. So even if you need a lot of color, you would want to press out the color and you can be rest assured that the color won't just leak out of these nibs. I added a hint of purple to my flowers, and if you see here how beautifully the purple and pink have blended. For my leaves, I used two shades of green. I have moss and emerald. It definitely gives a very beautiful dimensional look to my leaves, and also I love how stunning these flowers look with the shades of bright pink and that purple. Now, if you find it difficult to blend both of these inks together and if you feel that your paper is too dry, all you need to do is dip the nib of your paintbrush in some water and just pull out the ink. For the center of my flowers, I used some oranges and yellows, and take a look at how gorgeous this focal point turned out. Well, you could also use this image to make mini slimline cards or even a regular slimline card. I made sure my panel was completely dry before I went ahead and cut these into two A2 size panels. Here, both of these panels measure 4 by 5 1 quarter, which will leave a slight border around all of the edges when we place it on our card base. Now here I am trying to figure out what sentiment would work best for these cards. Initially I had thought that I would stamp two separate sentiments, thereby creating two totally different cards. But I ended up stamping the same, sending love and hugs on both of these panels. I love how this looked with the floral background. Now I used the same gold embossing powder to stamp both of these sentiments. I like to use my Simon Says Stamp grid transparency sheets to align my sentiments and make sure they are perfectly centered or in a straight line. Now, when I am heat embossing multiple card panels, what I like to do is do one step at a time. So here you'll see I am stamping and pouring the gold embossing powder on both these panels first, and then after that I will heat set it both together. Now, since the font on this sentiment is really delicate and thin, I decided that when I am running my heat gun through the paper, I will keep moving it along the sentiment and not hold it at one place for a long time. Now, here's a look at how this panels turned out. I love the gorgeous color, and the gold just pops the entire image together. Now I adhered both these panels onto a green card base, and well, I needed some extra dimension, so here I am using foam tape to mount these panels onto my card bases. I'm glad I trimmed both of these panels to be 4 by 5 1 quarter because I love the green trim. Now here I use some gold confetti sequences by This Calls for Confetti, and also stamped the same floral image for the inside of the card. Now here's a look at our finished cards. I absolutely love how this project turned out. There are so many different ways you could use this stamp set. Well, like I said, you could create slimline cards, or if you like creating bigger cards, you could use the entire image, or you could even cut out this image and make your own floral arrangements. Now if you're not into watercoloring, there are so many other coloring ways that you could color these beautiful floral images and use them on your card front. Now, the other floral image that was part of the stamp set, you could use that as your focal point if you're not someone who likes big floral stamped images on your card front. I hope you had fun watching today's video and got inspired. Well, I definitely had a lot of fun creating these cards. Thank you for joining me today. See you in my next video. Until next time, stay safe.